Hello friends and welcome back to Digitalk. So in this series we are going to cover the tuning and troubleshooting of WebSphere. Okay, so we have a different kind of environment like we have a development, testing, pre-productions, productions. Okay, and the tuning is something like we tune a lot of different parameters at the different levels so that our system should work properly. Okay, so we have a different kind of a tuning parameters and the value would completely depend on in which environment we are going to tune them. Okay, because in production you may have a different set of users, different set of load of your applications in your database, right? But if you go to the testing pre-production environments or maybe for development, then the user count and the load of your application may be different. Right, so depend on the different scenarios, we do a different kind of a tuning for each and every environment. Okay, and then once your environment is live, okay, then there would be a lot of situation where we encountered multiple issues. Okay, and when we encountered the issues, okay, then we do the different kind of a troubleshooting. And for troubleshooting, it depend on which subsystem you are getting the issues. Okay, and based on that we have a different command of a tools, different set of commands or the different ways, okay, which we can utilize, okay, for the troubleshooting of WebSphere. So in this complete series we are going to cover everything in detail and thoroughly with respect to tuning and troubleshooting, which is practically you are going to use in your professional environments. Okay, so the very beginning, the very first session, okay, so very first session is introduction to tuning and troubleshooting. So that means we'll cover what are the different areas where we can do the performance tuning, okay, or also you can say what are the different areas, okay, where we can encounter the issues and we may have to do the troubleshooting, because tuning and troubleshooting is depend on the multiple factors. Okay, so because when you deploy the application in your WebSphere, okay, so this is your WebSphere application server. When you deploy your application, then users are connecting to your WebSphere. Okay, and then your WebSphere may be connecting to the DB, or maybe it is connecting to the multiple third-party systems. Okay, so there would be end-to-end flow. You have to understand, okay, what are the different areas where the tuning may impact, okay, and what are the different areas where we have to perform the troubleshooting, depend on what kind of a issues that you are facing. Okay, so now what we will do, we will first understand the different areas, okay, where we can get the problems, or where we have to do the tuning. So let us start with the very basic request flow, okay, to understand the different tuning areas and troubleshooting areas. Okay, so now suppose that there is a user who is trying to access the application that you have deployed in some of your application server like your WebSphere. Okay, so this session is very generic. It's not specific to WebSphere. It could be your WebSphere, it could be your JBoss, or your Tomcat, your WebLogic. Okay, so because this is a specific session which will tell you about the different areas of tuning and troubleshooting that would be common across all the technologies, because the same architecture be designed across almost all of the application servers. Okay, so now whenever a user try to access an application, so most of the time you will have a web server in front of your application servers. Okay, there would be multiple reasons for configurations of a web server, for acting as a reverse proxy, for security reasons, because our complete application code is in the application server, so no one allow the request directly reach to your application server where you have a complete application code. So we have a web server in front, and then from web server request reach to your application servers where you have deployed your applications, right? So this could be your WebSphere, this could be your WebLogic server, okay, this could be your JBoss, right? It could be any of the enterprise with application server. Okay, now whenever the application needed data, okay, so your application server will going to reach your database instance. This is a very basic architecture you will see almost every year. Okay, now depend on uh, the complexity of environment. Okay, you may have the multiple components for the high availability, right? So here I have just mentioned one application server, one web server, one database instance. Okay, for high availability you can have the multiple web servers like this one. Similarly, you can have a multiple application servers. Similarly, you may have the multiple database instances. Okay, but this is a very generic flow of your request whenever a user access the application which is deployed in any of your application servers. Okay, now what are the different areas where you need to tune, okay, or where you may have to do certain kind of a troubleshooting. So now you can see we have a different layers. We have a web server, we have an application server, we have a database instance, right? So issues can be at any end. It's not about specific application server. So in this session, we are definitely going to cover only the WebSphere application server. Okay, but apart from that, you should have an understand of complete ecosystem, because many time it is happened that you may be trying to do the troubleshooting at the application level, but the problem may be at some different end. Okay, so you should have a complete understanding of each and every ecosystem component that is participating in your application server. Okay, now, so when we say that a user is trying to access your application, okay, and the request is reaching to the web server, and from web server it is reaching to your application server. Okay, so now when we design the architecture, okay, the web servers, your application servers, your database instances, that is completely designed based on the load in your system, how much load you are expecting in your system. Okay, that is could be like how many concurrent user you may be expecting in your system. Okay, so like we are designing our system for expected number of concurrent or simultaneous user will be 100. So based on the concurrency, I will select, okay, how many web servers I need, how many application servers I need, how many database instances I need, right? So now what happened many times, okay, your system has been designed for the 100 number of expected concurrent or simultaneous users, but at a certain moment, due to any reasons, if the load is increased in your system, okay, and you may see that now the user that is hitting your system is around 150 or 200, okay, or you can say it is more than 100. So you designed your system for the concurrency of 100, but now you started getting the higher load in your system. So what will happen in that case? Your web server may create the problem, and along with that, your application server may also create the problem, because your system is not designed to cater the 150 or 200 number of users. It is designed only for the 100 number of users. So if the load is getting increased, then definitely the processing of your application is going to be hampered, right? And what will happen along with that, your web server may not able to process the request, right? Because your web server also has some concurrency, how many requests it can process simultaneously. Okay, so it is designed for the 100, but now you are getting that 100 or 150 or 200, right? So your web server may also reject the request, and if it is not rejecting the request, maybe your web server is allowing the 150 and 200 number of requests, and when it is reaching to your application server, then your application server is not able to process these number of requests, because it is designed for only the 100 number of concurrency. So your application server may get slowed down or may start rejecting the request, right? So that means the very initial level, if I talk about the tuning and troubleshooting, okay, the issue could be at the web server level, the issue could be at the request, total number of requests that is coming to your system. Okay, you have to understand what is the concurrency of your web server, okay, what is the concurrency of your application server, how many requests that is reaching to your application server, that you can check in the access.log file, or in WebSphere we have some different system log files, okay, where you can check for the number of requests that is reaching to your application server. So overall, what I'm trying to explain is there could be a higher load in your system that may slow down your applications. Okay, so you may have a bad tuning of the web servers in front of your application server. Okay, now when we specifically talk about the application server, so there are multiple things are there, okay, in application servers. It's not a specific thing. So I have taken few important considerations, but apart from that, there are multiple things that we are going to cover in this session. Okay, so application servers, you may have a bad tuning of your application servers, okay, because there are a lot of parameters are there in the application server, and one of the most important parameter is the heap size, right? Because your WebSphere is also a Java-based application server. So every server run on own JVM, and each JVM need the heap size. Okay, so now depend on how much requests are coming to your application server. Okay, and what is the amount of data or objects that is generating by each and every request. Based on that, you have to tune your heap size. Okay, we will cover that in detail in the heap size session. Okay, so we have to tune the heap size. If heap size is not good, okay, then definitely you are going to get a lot of performance kind of issues with respect to your application. Your application server may get crash with the out of memory errors. Okay, your application processing may get slow, and which will impact the users. Slow loading of the applications, or may not be applications are not responding. Okay, you may have the log issues. Okay, so we know that there are a lot of log files are created. Okay, so if the log size files is getting increased, it is sometime you will see it in the GB of size, 5 GB, 10 GB, or more than that. Okay, so if the log size is very big, then your application, when writing to the log files, may slow down the processing of your application server, which may impact the performance of your applications. Node space issue. Your application server is running on the server. Maybe it is a physical server, it could be a virtual machine. Okay, so there could be a space issue in your node or the machine. Due to that, your application server may get issues. Okay, you may have the database issues because application need to connect to the database, right, for the data. So in the enterprise world, like in today's world, we have everything in the database. Even a lot of softwares has the metadata in the database. Okay, that means the data which is required for that particular server, application server to run. Okay, so most of the time, more than 99% of the time, our application servers has a dependency on the database. So if your database is not tuned properly, okay, then your application is going to suffer because your application going to contact your database for the data. And if your database is not responding properly, okay, then definitely your application server is going to be suffer. If application server going to suffer, then end user going to suffer, right? Maybe your application server sending a request and expecting that a SQL query send the response back within 1 second, 1 second maximum. But your application server, your database server is not optimized or may not be responding properly due to multiple reasons, and the response is coming back in around 10 seconds or maybe in 1 minute of a time. That means your user is going to complain about the slowness of your application, right? So that means you have to tune your database as well properly because your application server has a full dependency on the database. Right. And apart from that, multiple times we have a shared storage in the application server. There are a lot of data that is stored in the shared file system. Okay. So if shared file system, which is an external storage, okay, if that external storage is not performing well or may have a certain kind of issues, then your application server will not able to contact or read the data which is there in the shared storage. So that is may also going to impact your application server performance. Okay, now when we talk about the database, so again the problem could be your database tuning is very bad. You may have a long running SQL. There are a lot of SQL which is running very long. That means the SQL has not been tuned properly, and then where it is expected to send the result back in 1 second, now it is sending the result back in 30 seconds, 1 minute of a time, or more than that. Okay, you may have a insufficient resources. That's the tuning. That means the hardware resources that is required by the database, like the physical RAM, CPU, core processors. It may also be very less. Table space is few. So table space specifically, if I talk about the Oracle database, we have a table space which is a logical unit where every objects are get created. So multiple time it has happened, your table space is full, and then your application is request is getting rejected or may not be getting the response. So you may get the multiple kind of a issues. Okay, and now your every subsystem is connected with the network, right? Your users are connecting to web servers connecting to application server connecting to database, and every component is connected with the network. That means you can have a problem at the network level as well. It doesn't mean that always you have a problem at the application server level, database level, web server level. You may have a problem at the networking level as well. Okay, some data is not reaching to the destinations, or maybe it is slow, it is getting rejected. There could be multiple reasons. Okay, so that means when we are working about the tuning and troubleshooting, okay, you have to think about from all and each and every perspective. Okay, and that means you should aware about that. Okay, we are going to do the tuning or troubleshooting of application server, but the problematic areas could be any. It's not about that it could be only application server. There may be a problem with the networking, may be a problem with the web server, there may be a problem with the database servers, and that you have to identify when you actually start doing the troubleshooting with the help of multiple data that you collect with the help of multiple commands and multiple tools that we are going to cover in this particular session. Right. So now, hope you have a now overall idea of how we perform the tuning and troubleshooting, or at least what all are the areas that can contribute for the problems in your system. And when we start doing the troubleshooting and tuning, okay, what are the areas that we have to keep in our mind? Right. Now, the last one is apart from all that, your application servers may have an integration with third-party systems. Okay, it may be connecting to some different on-premise application. It may be connecting to some cloud applications with the help of APIs, right, to get or sending some data. You may have an integration with some different tools like the SOA, service-oriented architecture, maybe with some identity tools for authentication and authorizations. Okay, and you may have integration with some e-business suite, or maybe you have some third party or some other ERP systems, right? So that means your application server may have integration with the multiple different third-party tools, cloud applications. It may have integration with the database. So the problem can be anywhere, because if third-party system is going to be impacted due to any reasons, then again your application server is going to slow. It may not respond because your application server is sending a request to a cloud application, and that cloud application is not responding, then definitely your application server is going to slow. Right. So this is the complete ecosystem of your application server, where the tuning and troubleshooting is completely depend on all these components. And when you start doing the troubleshooting or tuning, you have to keep all these contents, or you can say this complete architecture in your mind, okay, so that you can do the better tuning and better troubleshooting. Right. So from next session, we are starting the actual monitoring and tuning, because when we say that tuning and troubleshooting, there are a lot of things that we do with the help of monitoring, right? You have to understand what is the current value, what is the value that we have configured, and based on that, we can do the different kind of a further performance tuning, right? So that means we need to monitor our system as well. What is the current situation of our system? Right. So that means monitoring, tuning, and troubleshooting, that we are going to cover completely in detail from the next session.